Hi, it's Dr. Parikh. Welcome to Module 6. So here we are definitely focused on your research proposal. We are figuring out the different parts of the proposal and how the proposal is different from the lit review. If you feel completely lost, remember we talked about a lot of this stuff early on. So if you have no idea what it is, go back to Module 1 and watch videos like what is a lit review, what is a research proposal, and also see how this new research proposal, this sort of temporary research proposal, um, is kind of what's expected. And most of the sample papers you have access to are focused on this, are done in the format of this temporary research proposal. Um, so this is really getting into the nitty gritty. We are doing a lot of APA tutorial work on uh, sort of research, a little bit of research ethics. It's not our complete focus here, but it's important to understand, to know, because when you get to experimental psych and other upper level courses, including capstone, you're going to be expected to know what sorts of things, oh, I didn't mean to click that, what sorts of things go into an empirical article or a research proposal. And so, even though we're not doing all of the steps, it's really important that you understand what goes into those sections. It's also helpful because if you get exposed to this information now, when you get re exposed in stats or in experimental psych, it'll come easier. Even if you don't remember that you read it in or not gen psych, in writing in psych, the way learning in psychology works and memory is that you will learn it faster. You will understand it faster and deeper. So these are all the tutorials and the quick guides that I thought really related to understanding the structure and the formatting of a research proposal. Just as a heads up, next week there is very little reading because at that point you're pretty much just editing everything and getting peer feedback. So this is the last week that has significant reading tutorials. There's also not a ton of videos next week. There's not a ton this week either, but there's some more. Again, file this away mentally or bookmark it somewhere so that you know later when you do have to write these sections, you have some more resources. Because again, upper level courses are going to assume that you understand the basics of how to format these things. Look at the sample papers that do have these sections. You're finishing up some APA quizzes. Yeah. So, as part of this temporary arrangement where you are not writing your own method and results section, partly I needed to put those points somewhere, the points that you would normally use on those sections. And also, I want to make sure that it's not just going out into the ether, that you're not just, I'm not just putting it up and you skip it and have no interaction. So, I have two discussions set up. They are very well compensated for discussions. 30 points each is pretty good for the level of depth I'm asking for. So in each of them, I'm asking you to consider these concepts. And I'm also asking, part of what's included there is to ask me a question in bold about them. My goal for the online version of the class is to make a quick video where I go through and briefly answer all of those questions. For my in-person classes, I will hopefully have some class time to spend. Or actually, with class time, we might start with anyone who wants to ask their questions directly, and then if we have crickets and silence, I will go into the discussion and just go one by one through the questions. Let's see. And like any discussion, you are meant to respond to two of your peers. If you know the answer to something they asked, you can certainly share it. Or if you think you know the answer, you can also just say, that's a good question. You're going to write a reflection on the feedback you got from your literature review. If something has happened and we haven't met by the end of this module, uh, you can email me just to check what's going on. Typically, if it's my fault, let's say I had an emergency and had to cancel our first appointment, or I have not been able to get you the videos reviews for it, then of course I will take those. I will take that assignment late. If you keep canceling and putting off your review, um, or if you got me your paper pretty late, then that's not as great. That you'll want to email me to see what I'm going to say. It might depend on the situation because technically, if if it's late, it's late. Again, when things are late because of something that's my fault, I certainly take responsibility and give you extensions. You're also, remember for the discussion, you're going to pretty much completely rewrite your discussion section. Very little gets recycled um, because there's a slightly different focus and format for a research proposal. Next week, you are just kind of stitching everything together for your research proposal, replacing, again, the abstract, roadmap, conclusion, those sorts of paragraphs you're replacing. Um, so this is the last week that you're really creating a lot of new content. And then actually doing the present study outline, which links your literature review uh, to the research, to the hypothesis that you're presenting, and then which should match exactly with what we ended up deciding for your research question. If you haven't gotten full credit for your research question yet, that's another time where if I have not been responding to things, I'm probably going to give you some extra time to do the present study outline. But if if I give you feedback within a day or two and then another 2 or 3 days goes by and you don't give me anything else, if it was something where we needed a couple rounds of feedback, this present study outline might be considered late and not accepted. So it's an online class, it moves quickly, and I've tried to give you a full week to go back and forth a couple times with the research question, and I will try really hard to respond to those quickly. For things that need a fast response, like a research question, it may be helpful to use email instead. So if we're getting close to the present study outline and you don't have a finalized hypothesis yet, hypothesis and research connect question are very, very closely linked. So I sometimes use those terms interchangeably, just to let you know. So if we're getting close and you haven't gotten feedback on the last thing you submitted, send me an email instead, because that pops right up for me. Whereas Blackboard, I have to go in and look for it, which is the other reason late work doesn't work so well because I don't know to go in and look for it. All that said, this week again things are still moving, but students typically do feel like the big pressure's off. It is a quick turnaround to do the literature review, but you are only changing a few sections. I really think the literature review, the introduction section where you're citing sources, is the most difficult, and that is pretty much settled. You're not making a lot of changes there. You're not doing a lot of brand new stuff, which is nice. So it does, the second part, it's definitely not a half and then another half. It's kind of a, okay, real quick, let's re-up this. But remember, space always comes from somewhere. This extra time in modules 4 and 5 is partly because you have, we don't have to get as much done crammed into module 6 and 7. Um, so if we were to give more time down here, that would mean being rushed up here. I often get feedback from students saying, well, it really felt like this was rushed, but very rarely do they tell me what they think I should have rushed instead. Because it's a zero-sum game in this class. If I go give more time for one assignment, I give less time for another. I've already stripped it down quite a bit from where it was even just a year ago, pre-pandemic. Some of this I'll put back after the pandemic. Some of it I may leave out going forward. We'll see. All that said, take good care. You are very near the finish line. Happy writing. Bye bye.